This video walks you through the major steps for validating measure and dimension data in your Stratum environment. I'll point out things to watch for that help you determine if data is valid and complete, and give you tips about investigating the cause of invalid or missing data. First, make sure you have access to the original source data that you'll be validating in Stratum. You'll compare data in Stratum views to your source data. Another thing to have on hand is the validation checklist that Silvon sent to you, summarizing what to validate. The tasks there can be marked complete as you finish them. Let's start by running the actual Sales 1 data validation demo view in your Stratum environment. Search by name using the search feature at the top of Stratum. Double-click the demo view in search results to run it. Now you can see your company's unique data as you follow along and watch the rest of this video. I'll talk about checking measure data first, then discuss dimensions. Many of the guidelines that I'll share are relevant to both types of data. Measures are the basic units of data for your Stratum dimensions. Sales and open orders are examples. When checking measure data, focus on totals of measures in the category you've been asked to look at, like these sales measures. First, check the annual totals for each year where data exists. Ask these questions for every value you check. Are the measure totals correct for every year? Do they match my source? My view has 3 years of data for a selection of sales measures. The most important to me are these four, showing me the baseline sales and returns, so they'll get my attention first. Your view reflects your sales and other important business measures selected for use in your view. My view has some recent years of data in it. Your view should have even more current data than mine, including the current year data. Review the current year first, then check older years. After verifying numbers at the year level, click the current year to check its quarterly subtotal data. After that validation, click the quarters level to check monthly totals. If you are drilled down to a lower level and need to return up to a higher level, click its heading in the view, like I'm doing now. Repeat this sequence of validation until you check all quarters and months for every vital measure. Stop the validation if you come across any issues. I'll show you a few common things to watch out for, then I'll highlight the last couple validation steps to complete for measures using this view. If you see any of these issues, gather up some details to determine what data is affected and do research to eliminate simple explanations. When you contact Silvon about an issue, send along notes about what you saw, what you researched, and screenshots of what you observed. Sharing those details can speed up issue review and resolution. Incorrect totals for any period of time are a top reason to stop and investigate. Explore the view to find out which periods of time are affected. For example, if a year's total is wrong for which quarters, click that year to check the quarters. Drill down to the relevant months and weeks until you determine where the issue originates from and how much of the data in this view isn't a match to your source data. Also try to rule out simple explanations for a discrepancy. For example, make sure you're not working from an outdated copy of the source data when carrying out data validation. Are you looking at the same source values that were provided to Silvon for loading into your Stratum Data Hub? Also double check that you're comparing data from the same point in time when checking measure values in the view against the source, and not accidentally comparing data from two different periods. Another major thing to watch for? Lack of data where you expected to see data, such as no sales data showing up for a period of time when you're certain you had sales. If there is data to load for the measure item, make sure you give that data to Silvon. If you supplied data and aren't seeing it, notify Silvon. I don't see any data for the rebate amount revenue measure in my view. I did some research and realized I forgot to supply that data to Silvon. I'll need to provide that data for adding to my data hub. A third reason to pause validation is if measures you expected to see aren't in the view. Were measure details supplied to Silvon when they loaded data into your environment? Did the measure get enabled for use in Stratum? Looking at this Add Measure Items window is a quick way to check if a measure is available to use in Stratum. If it was enabled but not showing in the view yet, adding it to a view is simple. If a measure that you expected to see is not showing as available to add to your views, let Silvon know. Typically, only items with meaningful data are enabled for use in Stratum and added to views. Take note, you might see a not mapped row while navigating through periods of time. That row is a data placeholder. It means the period of time that data belongs to hasn't been defined in Stratum administration. Action can be taken to correct that. If you see measure data in a not mapped row, that's an issue to bring to Silvon's attention. If the placeholder row doesn't have any data, ignore it. That's not an issue. Another placeholder is a not valid row. That happens when a time period doesn't apply to some measures in the view. For example, daily data might exist for sales, but not budget measures. Data gets assigned to the not valid member, so you can still see it in views. If you see measure data in the not valid row and you think it should be valid because it was meant for a particular time period, bring that to Silvon's attention. Now let's return to a few final steps for measure data validation. After you've verified the measured totals for years, quarters, and months, move on to spot check totals for any lower level time periods like weeks and days. For example, check the current week and the last few weeks of sales for this year, and check days for those weeks. I also recommend reviewing Stratum glossary descriptions for measures as you validate their data. Descriptions give users greater insight into what a measure represents. Update descriptions lacking that detail. Here's the extended list price description in my glossary, already customized by someone. Do any descriptions need updating in your glossary? That's the last step for checking measure data summarized by years and other detailed periods. That brings us to part 2 of the video, validating data summarized by different dimensions, such as company or division. Start by running this Actual Sales 2 data validation demo view in your Stratum environment. Use the search feature at the top of Stratum, locate the view in search results, and double-click to run it. This view is well suited for dimension data validation. Your view should look similar to mine. Topmost levels of analysis are in rows, with other detailed levels available to look at in the view definition. Measures from the first demo view are organized by time across the columns. A filter on years has been set up so that we can validate 1 year of data at a time. Levels belong to Stratum dimensions and hierarchies. They're the foundation of your Stratum views. Levels shape views into the desired type of analysis, such as a view for analyzing sales by your company's products. Start by checking annual numbers for levels from the upper dimensions. They are company and division in my view. Your view will look similar to this one. One difference is that your available years will be more up-to-date than mine, which has a sample set in which 2020 is the current year. Review your annual numbers for the current year. Ask yourself the same basic questions you considered for measures. Are the measure values correct for each level? Do the numbers match my source? Are all of the items I expected to see showing up? Focus on the current year values, then other years. The filter on years is changed with these simple steps. Do that when you're ready to check other years of data, such as data from last year. Don't forget to check the descriptions of validated levels in the Stratum glossary, accessed from these More Info icons in the view or the main Stratum menu. Add meaningful descriptions if they don't exist. You can do the same for a level's hierarchy and dimension descriptions by navigating to them in the glossary too, as shown here. If everything looks okay with upper dimensions, drill down to check year values for mid-level dimensions, like region or salesperson. If there's a lot of regions or salespeople, validate one at a time, then repeat the steps for the next region or person. What mid-level dimensions show in your view? Look at the navigation panel above the view to see what's currently defined for your view. Pause your validation of dimension data if you notice missing or incorrect data. Do some research to pinpoint the cause and specific members impacted by the issue. Are all or some members of a level affected? If meaningful data exists for members where you don't see data in the view, give it to Silvon so it can be added to your Stratum Data Hub. If your entire view is blank, other than row and column captions, was there data for items in the view, and was it given to Silvon? It's also possible in such cases that a Stratum role for controlling your access to data needs to be modified so you can see the data. Gather necessary details and images about what you see if you need to notify Silvon about an issue. Another reason to pause would be seeing a row of measure data show up for a level where the member value in that row is a question mark or a percent sign. This could be an issue. Stratum uses those characters as generic placeholders when measures don't have summary data for the applicable level. Here's my view adjusted to show the company and cost object activity levels on rows. Since my Stratum Data Hub does not have sales data summarized by cost object activity, all the sales data correctly displays in the row for the question mark member. If you encounter a question mark or percent sign row that has values and you think they should not, gather info and images of what you see to share with Silvon. If data looks okay at higher summary levels like company, division, and others that I've showed you, your next task is spot checking yearly data for popular detailed levels. My view has product and customer sold to levels. Yours will have similar detailed levels in it. I'm dragging product to the first position on rows so I can begin checking its data in the current year. I'll spot check a wide enough range of product values, comparing them to my source data, until I'm certain all products I expected to see are here and values are accurate. Do the same for your detailed summary levels until you've completed a thorough mix of checks by product and key measures. Don't forget to customize glossary descriptions of detailed levels as you validate them. Complete all other dimension validation steps described in the validation checklist that Silvon gave you. Your unique checklist may have other tasks to complete that aren't covered in this video. If you have invoice levels in your business, you'll likely be asked to spot check totals of invoice levels in your view and make sure they match their corresponding invoice values in source data. To add any level of choice into a view, use the Add symbol in the navigation panel. If you use that shortcut to add more levels to analyze, only pick levels for which data exist in your data hub and that are relevant to the measures in this view. That wraps up my summary of what to do when checking data for measures and dimensions in your Stratum environment. Validate data until you feel confident things are correct, complete, and a match to source data, and until you've completed the Silvon provided validation checklist, along with any additional tasks required by your company. This part of Stratum Help has more details about data validation and reasons for common data issues. Check out other sections of Help to prepare for day-to-day use of Stratum, like this Getting Started section. Other learning resources like FAQ and how-to articles are in the knowledge base of Silvon's CustomerNet site.